Launchpad McQuack. That's not the
So, we're starting the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg today, and the waves we're doing is about 1 to 2. Now, before we start this video, or iceberg, you can see how this one's a little bit bigger than the Left 4 Dead one. Mostly because I guess Scott Pilgrim has a big fan base or whatever. Brian Lee O'Malley, creator of the series himself, comic, game, and movie. First came the comic, volumes 1 through 6, then came the movie in 2010, and then came the game that got delisted on Xbox 360 and PS3 in 2014 because of licensing reasons probably. But then in 2021 it was brought back, well technically 2020, but mainly 2021 it was brought back, remastered on Xbox One and PS4. The League of Evil Exes. The League of Evil Exes are, well, Ramona's exes, and that consists of Matthew Patel, Lucas Lee, Todd Ingram, Roxanne Richer, the Katanagi twins, and Gideon Graves himself. The Glow. Basically, somewhere in the end of Volume 1, when Scott starts saying Ramona, when Scott mentions Gideon, her head starts glowing for some reason. It doesn't really explain this through volumes 1 to 5. Eventually in 6, everybody's head glows, but the reason for this is because it shows that Ramona has strong feelings, or emotional strong feelings, of something that happened in the past. Now it's not really explained what happens to everybody in the end of volume 6, or no. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright's the creator of the Scott Pilgrim movie, and other movies like Shaun of the Dead. Black Sheep. Black Sheep is a song that plays in a Scott Pilgrim movie, but only for about 20 seconds probably. It doesn't play fully, but there is a YouTube song of it. But I can't play it because, copyright, because we just love copyright. The movie uses video game aspects. So basically, the movie and comic uses a lot of video game references. Since the comic was made before the movie, the comic referenced a bunch of, video game references. It's like Sonic and Knuckles, Zelda, Sonic himself, I guess. I couldn't really find any movie screenshots, so I just showed the comic compared to a game. The X-Men jacket reference in the comic. On Scott's jacket, it references the X-Men symbol. He claims he got an honors or something. The 10th anniversary screenings. There was 10th anniversary screenings in the movie. The anime. Earlier this year, a Scott Pilgrim anime was announced and apparently is still being worked on, but it might be cancelled, so we're not really sure. Seconds and Lost at Sea. These were 2 more books made by Brian Lee O'Malley, with Seconds even having a reference, or at least 2 of them, to Scott Pilgrim. Evil X hardcovers. So you ever want an evil version of a Scott Pilgrim book? Then here you go. There's Evil X covers, or hardcovers, of the Evil X's. Okay, since this iceberg is a little long, I'm gonna speed this up a little. Lisa Miller, Mr. Chow, and Plumtree. Lisa Miller is Scott's old friend from high school, and basically in volume 2 or 3, he sees her again. And apparently she actually liked Scott, but Scott didn't have feelings for her at the time, and still doesn't. Mr. Chow is Knives Chow's father. I think that's pretty obvious. Plum Tree is a band, and basically Scott Pilgrim's name was actually inspired by one of the song names that was, well, Scott Pilgrim. Snot Girl and an anime possibly being cancelled. Now I talked about the anime earlier, about, almost being cancelled, but we're not really sure if it's cancelled or still being worked on. Snot Girl is another Brian Lee O'Malley series, so it's probably, the 4th or even 5th series we've named on this Iceberg so far, and we're only in the first layer. Cheat codes, and I'll explain this shortly. There's cheat codes in the game, and I'll explain at least 2 of them, because I'm pretty sure there's only 2 of them. So first there's the Blood mod, and then there's the Power of Love sword. The Smeef book dubs. Smeef is a small YouTube channel, and he creates various content from like anime, cartoons, games, and yeah. Now recently, in 2021 and 2022, he uploaded the Scott Pilgrim comic dubs. I remember I actually watched, volume 1, but then I stopped suddenly for some reason. Not really sure why. But recently, he uploaded, probably mostly a week or 2 ago, the volume 6 ones that are actually animated, which is pretty cool. Brain damage meme. The Scott Pilgrim brain damage meme, which you can see right now. Vinyl Records. There's various vinyl records. That's really all. Stephen Stills is gay. So basically, in volume 4, 5, and 6, it's actually explained that Stephen Stills is gay, but it's not really explained until volume 6, but you can kind of see it in 4 and 5. In the Scott Pilgrim movie, he was gay already, but he just wasn't, ready to come out yet. So that was the first layer of the Scott Pilgrim iceberg, and now we move on to the second one, which is still the same size as the first one, surprisingly. Audience reactions changed with Scott Pilgrim the movie ending. So basically, while the audience was watching, the ending actually got changed. Basically, the original one, Scott got with knives, but then we got the one where Scott ends up with Ramona, like in the comic. There is at least 2 videos on YouTube that actually show an alternate ending that you could check. Michael Cera and Kieran, or not really sure how you say his name, sorry, and Colton's relationship. So basically, Michael Cera plays Scott in the Scott Pilgrim movie, and Kieran, or Colton, he plays Wallace. And basically, after the movie, they were, friends, played Mario Kart together. The free comic. So basically, there was a free comic book for Scott Pilgrim, and that's basically it. If you have volume 6 of the book, the free comic's actually already in there, just way in the back when the story ends. Multiple superheroes appeared in the movie. So I couldn't really find multiple superheroes, but there was only one. So basically, Lucas Lee, played by Chris Evans, he actually played Captain America a few times. Seconds cameos. So I took a picture of the Seconds book, or at least I saw one page, and you can see that Scott and Ramona are sitting at the Seconds restaurant, or at least the weird looking version of the Seconds restaurant. Evil X number references. So basically, Matthew Patel, he points to number 1 at Scott, and he has like $1. Lucas Lee points at Scott with, 2 fingers. Todd Ingram, he has a number 3 on his shirt. I mean, just look at him. And there's 3 people in his band, consisting of him, Andy Adams, and the drummer, which I still don't know her name for some reason. Roxanne Richer is the 4th X, and basically, technically, this doesn't really count, but at the same time it does count. In the movie posters, it shows her name spelled Roxy, and I guess it's spelled like that to show that she's like, the fourth X, and that's her, reference to her number. The Katinagi twins, Cal and Ken, they don't really show any signs of them being like the sixth one, or at least not anything that I could find. Then the psychotic Gay Graves, he shows a few signs, like, you make me swallow my gum, now I'm gonna be digesting it for 7 years. He's 7 years older than Scott and Knives, and the fellow one I'll tell is that there's 7 letters in his name. There's basically a bunch more, but there is YouTube videos you can see that actually show these. Knives/Kim's relationship. So, in volume 4 of the Scott Pilgrim books, it shows when they're drunk, Knives and Kim actually start dating. And in the game, if you play as Kim and you call Knives as a striker, basically they'll both kiss each other, which gives Kim health. And this, I'm not really sure if this really counts, but this does technically count, I guess, as an infinite health cheat, technically. Because if you're at, 0 health, well not 0 health, but at least like 15 health, you can still call Knives down and still get health. I mean, it'll be half or at least a quarter of the health now. Scott Pilgrim versus the animation. So on YouTube, 12 years ago, there was a Scott Pilgrim animation released, and that's really all. You can watch it, it is pretty cool. This animation does go over Scott's flashback to, his high school. Characters respawn when killed. Brian Lee O'Malley actually proved this, but basically when the characters are killed, they, respawn right back at their house. So just like a game, or like the Scott Pilgrim game, I guess. Mini statues. Basically, I couldn't really pronounce the word, but there's, Scott Pilgrim mini statues, to characters. The Funko line. So basically, like most movies or shows, Scott Pilgrim actually has, Funko Pops. The deleted scenes in the movie. So like any movie, Scott Pilgrim has some deleted scenes, and there's basically a 25-minute video showing them. The Scott Pilgrim card game. Basically, there's a card game of, Scott Pilgrim. That's really it. The Wonderful World of Kim Pine. There's basically a short story, and it's basically just, The Wonderful World of Kim Pine, which will just go through it. I'll scroll through it for you. The movie flopped. Basically, when the movie was first released, it actually flopped. It didn't really do so well. Ramona display figures. There's basically different display figures for, Ramona. Evil X editions. Now, I explained this earlier. There's Evil X covers of the books, so I don't really understand what this is really here. Nega Scott is unlockable in the game. So basically, if you ever played Scott Pilgrim, you might know that there's, Nega Scott, and you have to fight him. And to unlock them, you have to, beat the game 4 times, and not with the same character, but with, Scott, Kim, Stills, or Stephen Stills, and Ramona. And then once you do all that, you unlock Nega Scott. Then I guess you could beat the game with Nega Scott, then, yeah. So those were 1 and 2 of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg, and now we'll move on to 3 and 4, in the next video. Alright guys, so we're back with the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg, layers 3 through 4. The Kid Chameleon game. Oh yeah, so since I forgot to bring this up in the last Iceberg video, I kind of have to bring this up each time someone new watches an Iceberg video. So basically, if you're new to Iceberg videos and you don't know what it is, then I have to explain this each Iceberg video I do, or at least each new Iceberg video I do. Basically, at the tip of the iceberg, you have the most known topics, but then the deeper you go and the more desperate and deep and whatever, you don't really know much of that stuff. So a flashback in volume 3 of the Scott Pilgrim book, The Infinite Sadness, is basically a flashback to the band with, Scott, Stills, Kim, Envy, Neil Young. And that's basically what the Kid Chameleon game was. Clash at the Demon Head game reference. So, Envy and Todd's band, Clash at the Demon Head, that actually wasn't created by Brian Lee O'Malley, well, not the name, but it was actually from this different, game. Scott and Ramona plushes. So basically, there's these different Scott and Ramona plushes. That's actually really all. Scott Pilgrim Mezos toys. So basically, there's these different Mezcos, not Mezos toys of Scott Little Life 6. I couldn't find very much because, well, it says Scott's Little Life 6, but I could really find Scott Pilgrim's, Precious Little Life 1, from volume 1. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. So basically, these are all references to, real life things. Except I couldn't really find any for Crosby and Nash. Basically, Young, that's for young Neil, and it's actually Neil Young, a real life singer. And then Stephen Stills is actually a real life singer too. Real life locations. So basically, if you watch the Scott Pilgrim movie, you might know that, it's set in Canada, Toronto. And, the movie actually, says that. And if you read the books, then you might know that it's set in Canada, Toronto too. But when you actually finish the book, it'll show the real life locations of, some of the locations in the book and movie. Here's an example of, Scott and Wallace's house. Alternate ending ideas. Basically, there's some alternate ending ideas for the movie, even though this was already explained in layer 1 of Iceberg. Scott the Woes or Was versus Scott Pilgrim. So basically, there's a death battle video on YouTube of Scott the Woes versus Scott Pilgrim. Michael Cera's behavior on set. So basically, Michael Cera's behavior on movie set, he was not kinda for the role of Scott Pilgrim, but at the same time was, because his awkwardness worked with the movie, but that wasn't it. He actually got a concussion and some injuries during some of the fight scenes in the movie. So the one with Lucas Lee / Chris Evans. The game was lost media. So basically, in 2014, on PS3 and Xbox 360, the Scott Pilgrim game was removed or delisted. There's not really a main reason for this, so just go with licensing issues, I guess. But it was basically removed and it was basically lost media for a while. And I actually owned the 360 version of the game, but then my brother deleted it, and he didn't know that it was actually delisted. But later on in 2020 and 2021, the game was brought back so they could, play it again. Sandra and Monica are named after Brian Lee O'Malley's classmates. So basically, Sandra and Monica are background characters in the Scott Pilgrim books. And basically, their names, they're actually Brian Lee O'Malley's middle school classmates' names. Scott Pilgrim game had a 5-month deadline. So basically, the game only had a 5-month deadline. So you only really get 50% of the game, while you're actually supposed to get 100% of the game, but you still kind of got most of the percent of the game, because if you think about the game, it's still good. Oh yeah, and the reason for it had a 5-month deadline It's mainly because when it was being made, it was put with a studio that didn't really have much experience in making, well, games. But then another studio kind of helped them, so then, now you have Scott Pilgrim. So, that was the third layer of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg. Now we move on to the fourth layer. Monica Beale. Monica Beale is Scott Pilgrim's, well, mother. I'm not really sure why this would be in an iceberg. The Style comic. So basically, there's a Style comic that doesn't really revolve around Scott Pilgrim, but it revolves around like this other comic just called Style. Ramona's appearance in Death Battle. So basically, in a Death Battle episode, Ramona is shown in she versed out Amy Rose from Sonic. Deleted scenes in the comic. So apparently there is about a few lost or just cut deleted comic scenes, but I couldn't find any. So here's one of the panels from volume 4. Valentine's Day pinups. So basically there's some Valentine's Day pinups, and I guess there's only like these 3 of them, or 4. The actors never blinked in the movie. So basically, all the actors didn't blink in the movie. Well, maybe a few times, but you couldn't really notice it. But they didn't blink because they wanted to make it feel like more like the comic. Young Neil's original age. So basically, young Neil's, or Neil's by now, age, it was actually originally 9 instead of whatever he is now. Scott has schizophrenia, PTSD, and other things. Scott doesn't have schizophrenia or PTSD, it's just a glow that messes with his memory from Gideon. Kim was originally in a mutant super team. There's not really any information about Kim being in some super mutant team. The symbol is an upside down shoe. So basically, Gideon Graves' logo for a League of Evil X's, it's just his Triforce logo from Zelda, just flipped over. Sarah, or Michael Cera, pretended to be bad at bass or bass. Basically, Michael Cera just pretended to be bad playing bass, because actually, when the movie started, Michael Cera already knew how to play bass, but all the other actors had to learn how to play instruments. Gideon, the G-Man, is a Half-Life reference, which the entry just explains itself. The reason why Stacy Pilgrim appears less as the series goes on. This is mainly because Brian Lee O'Malley didn't want Stacy to get like a lot of attention, so she appeared less and less in the series, until probably volume 6 she finally appears, and she asks, like all the rest, why Ramona disappeared. The reason why Julie started to wear glasses. So this is actually because during when the movie was going on, Brian Lee O'Malley actually mistook Julie for Monica. Lisa's hair changes in the game. So basically, throughout the comics, Lisa's hair is blonde, and it stayed like that throughout the whole comic. But then in the game, it was for some reason pinkish. So that was layers 3 and 4 of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg. And then finally we'll move on to layers 5 and 6. Those are the final layers of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg. Also, thanks for watching the video, and live stream technically. Ramona's hair changes based on her mood. So I couldn't find any information about how her mood changes, but I did see how her change will just, change throughout the series. So in volume 1, it was, 2 strands of hair on the side of her, then the rest of her hair is, just where her hair usually is, and it's pinkish. Then in volume 2, it was her second hairstyle, and it's mainly the same, with it being a little bit darker, and it's 2 strands of hair on her side were actually cut off now. Her hair mainly stays the same in volumes 3 and 4. I mean, it is like, I guess, more cyan-ish in 4, while it's more blue, or midnight blue, in 3. In volume 5, it's technically the same. Only difference being, it's a little longer than in 4, and it's still the same color, being midnight blue. And then finally, in volume 6, her hair, it's the same from 5. I guess it goes a little bit around her more, and the color is turquoise. I'm pretty sure that's how you say that color. Also, she put some like star hair band thingy in her hair now. Ramona's hair inspiration. There's not really any inspiration I could find. All I could really find is that her hair is just wavy hair. Normal wavy hair. Anamanaguchi. I'm not really sure how you say her name. Basically, Anamanaguchi made the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. That's really all. Waltz's original last name. So basically, Waltz's original last name was actually going to be Weldon. Scott exaggerated the event. So basically, one exaggerated event that Scott did. So basically, when Scott moves to Toronto, I guess, Lisa actually tells Kim about this. Scott doesn't tell Kim. Why? I'm not really sure. But yeah, he exaggerated that he told Kim, but actually he didn't. Lucas Lee was in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. So basically, it doesn't show like Lucas Lee playing in the game, like some gameplay, but it shows this like sticker, Lucas Lee's Evil X Skater 2. And I'm not really sure why it says 2 instead of 4, but yeah. Avatar creator. So there's not really any photos of this that I could find, but basically there's an Avatar creator where you create, like Scott, but in your own like way, I guess. Sadly it was removed and you can't really see it anymore. The Mad TV parody. So I couldn't find like a Mad version of this or whatever it said, but I found it's not Pilgrim versus the world. Well, basically it's called It's Not Pilgrim versus the Wonderful World of Disney. Brie Larson was a fan of Edgar Wright, and this actually explains itself already. Roxy's tattoo is an Omnipress demon. I couldn't really find what Omnipress demon tattoo was talking about, because, it doesn't really show much. Paul Robertson. So basically, Paul Robertson's the person that actually, helped make Scott Pilgrim sprites and the level designs. Ramona's cat, Gideon, makes a cameo in the film. I couldn't really find anything about her cat, just appearing in the film. Seth Rogen could have played Scott. So actually, the reason why Seth Rogen didn't play Scott, it was actually because Brian Lee O'Malley and Edgar Wright, they liked Michael Cera's, awkwardness, because it just kind of fit with the film. Free comic color variations. So basically, I couldn't really find color variations, because usually when I think of color variations, it's usually just colors switched or just different colors in general. All I could really find was different book cover designs or the original ones. Mobile was inspired by Chris Butcher's, Brian's former roommate, husband. This entry actually explains itself. Julie Power Pack reference. I couldn't really find anything on this because, it didn't really show a reference. But one of Julie's powers is that basically, when she cusses, her mouth gets censored in a funny way. Brian Lee O'Malley's brother designed the 8-bit Universal logo, which explains itself again. Double negative. So basically, in one of these clips, Scott says double negative, Wallace actually says double negative. And basically it refers to how, Envy's back in town, and Scott also has to fight Ramona's evil exes. Plus, this is in the middle when Scott and Ramona are taking a small break, and then, Gideon gets in the middle of it. Brian Lee O'Malley and his wife cameo in the film. So basically, when the scene's zooming on Neil, whatever he's doing, basically if you look to the left, this actually shows Brian Lee O'Malley and his wife. But it's like for like maybe a second, so it's actually kind of hard to see. Plus they're kind of darkened out. So, that was layer 5 of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg. And now we move on to the final layer, which is layer 6. The first draft of the book was complete by the time book 2 was released. This entry actually explains itself, and a fun fact, when volume 6 finished, the movie got started about a few months later. Lawrence, Scott's brother, was working with the twins. So originally, Lawrence has actually got a way bigger role where he was working with Gideon and the twins, but he didn't, so he just gave Scott his guitar. Scott Peng cameo. So in a comic called Peng, made by Omnipress, Scott actually appears in it for a page. Scott is dead theory. So basically there's a theory that Scott died and he's in the desert of Ramona. And technically there's an entry that elaborates on this, but I can't say it yet. But basically the theory is Scott, he's dead because Gideon, stabbed him right through the chest with a sword. Volume 5 metallic cover slipped band. So basically it's this like movie pack that includes, I guess Scott Pilgrim movie and these Lucas Lee wannabe movies. Wallace was Dave's cousin. I couldn't really find anything on Wallace having a cousin named Dave. Ramona's dead brother. So basically, Ramona has a dead brother that isn't spoken much in the book, but is spoken in the movie a little. And let's just zoom in on her neck real quick. So basically, our neck, there's a theory that this is her, shoelace to her younger brother, but it isn't. It was proven by Brian Lee O'Malley himself. And then for the final entry of the Scott Pilgrim Iceberg, Scott and Ramona ascended into heaven. So basically, earlier, like a few minutes ago, remember I said Scott and Ramona are apparently in heaven, which is the desert? This entry basically relates to it, and it's basically what Wallace says in this page, or at least in one of the ending pages in volume 6. So, that was the whole Scott Pilgrim Iceberg, made by Market Massive. And yeah, it was pretty long, way longer than Left 4 Dead Iceberg. And I don't really know what Iceberg I'm going to do next, so I guess you could comment which one you want me to do next. And, well, yeah.